We now go to the next section, predominant guna at the time of death and the consequences of whatever the predominant guna is. We've come across this idea before where Bhagwan says that, if at the end of your life, you remember the truth, you remember Bhagwan, you will travel towards the higher worlds. Kramamukti. This is what Bhagwan is also describing in a slightly different way. Now he's going to describe to us in the context of the gunas. If the embodied one meets with death when sattva is predominant, then what happens? He attains the spotless worlds of the knows of the highest. Knows of the highest means right up to Brahmaloka, where the highest knowledge is available absolutely wonderfully. You travel in that direction. And of course, in between, there are also higher worlds where there are knowers of the truth to different degrees. But what it means is that you go upwards. And then meeting death in Rajas, what happens? He is born among those attached to action. Because we are now, thinking about action, we are continuously kind of trying to get something. We are attached to the things of the world. Through action, we begin to attain things, acquire things. And as we keep on doing this, what happens is that we get attached to action, and therefore we are born into that kind of family. And then dying in tamas is born into the womb of the senseless. So here what happens is that sattva, if it is predominant at the time of death, we go to the higher worlds. Rajas, we remain on the earthly plane, very likely. And then tamas, we go into the lower worlds. So now this is where we can think of, okay, I've got this human birth now, but I have, been in this predominant tamasic guna throughout my life, and therefore even at the end of my life, it was this tamasic way of behaving. Somehow it can even take us to the lower regions and the lower worlds. So predominant, again, in a pictorial form, this is what happens. Sattva, worlds of the knowers; Rajas, world of action; Tamas, world of darkness. And upwards or downwards, we have the choice. We can actually choose which direction we want to go towards. Why? Because when we use our buddhi, when we use the knowledge and do our sadhana, our abhyas, we begin to move towards sattva, we begin to go to the higher worlds if we happen to pass away in this predominant guna. Again, something Bhagwan has talked about before, but in a different context. But here we are also talking about a similar thing, but from the lens of the gunas. So the fruit of good action, again, making something clearer to us in terms of death and its consequences. The fruit of good action is sattvic and pure. The fruit of rajas is pain, and the fruit of tamas is ignorance. So in other words, that when we are predominantly in a sattvic kind of guna, then we will be performing good actions. We will be going towards punya. We will be going towards purity and sattvification and purification. In rajas, what happens is that the outcome is really pain. Even if we try to get this, that, and the other, we try to hoard, we get attached, and we know what happens when there is attachment. Why? Because there is impermanence, there is transiency. We get dependent on these things. Remember the 5 lessons of life. This is what rajas is going to bring. Eventually, there is only pain because we are going to leave all these things behind, which we have been so engaged with, trying to acquire, trying to hoard. And the fruit of tamas is ignorance. Of course, it is ignorance because, the avidya, the ignorance is really what tamas is engaged in, because it doesn't want to know, it doesn't care, and it is completely devoid of any kind of movement towards knowledge, and therefore the fruit of tamas is ignorance. What arises from sattva? Knowledge again. Greed arises from rajas, and heedlessness, delusion, and also ignorance arise from tamas. Now, Bhagwan is telling us this why? Because he wants us to know and begin to think about how we can get towards the sattvic predominant life. And what is going to happen once we have a certain predominance of the each of one of these gunas. So those who are abiding in sattva go upwards, just like we talked about before. Rajasic dwell in the middle, and tamasic abide in the function of the lowest guna. They now travel downwards. So important to understand that there is purusharth, there is choice which is available to us. There is this willingness to travel to the ultimate goal, which allows us to do sadhana and abhyas, and therefore we can definitely move towards a sattvic mode of being, and we can definitely move upwards into the uh, realms which are the lokas above. And then, of course, we'll come down, but we can keep on climbing, climbing, climbing until we transcend all the gunas. So, fruit of the action in sattva is purity and knowledge, in rajas is pain and greed, in tamas is ignorance and delusion. So now we have to think about which direction we want to go. Direction is upwards, and this is going to come through purification. Remember, the other word for purification is sattvification, the sattva guna being predominant. We are interested in knowledge, the highest knowledge. We are interested in purification of the me and the mind from our consciousness. And this takes place through our sadhana.